It is such a pleasure, and thank you so much for not being at lunch right now and staying here. I appreciate that. It's a really tough gig, so thank you very much for that. My name's Sam Fromson. Thank you so much for the introduction. Co-founder and COO at YuLife. And I wanted to share with you some insights, first of all, from what we've gleaned from asking our customers, doing a survey with YouGov of 4,000 senior employees and then combined with HR leaders from across the UK, and also shared with our own insights, because YuLife now, we've got a team of 270, 280 people, not the massive enterprises, but we have a wide-ranging demographic. So also my own insights from what I've learned from being the COO of that organisation and speaking to my peers, founders of other fast-growing startups from across the UK. So we asked the question, what do employees want? And I bet no one can guess the answer. People want more holiday. People want flexible working. People want more benefits. They want more of everything. Fewer working hours. Great, if you ask people, they'll tell you what they want. Of course they want fewer working hours. And of course, better working environment. And principally among all of those, annual leave, the time off. What they really want from work is not to be at work. Now, you kind of have to wonder if that's exactly what it's our job to manifest. Because we kind of balance two things, and I speak for myself as a founder, as a COO, all of you guys, you've got competing priorities here. On the one hand, it's all of your jobs to really create the best possible experience for your team, to manifest something that's enriching and able to support them being their best selves every day. And on the flip side, you're trying to run a business. And so you could organise a year-long trip to the Caribbean for every person, and you would get stratospheric employee appreciation, employee engagement numbers would be through the roof, and you'd propose that to your CEO, and that might not cut the mustard, so to speak. And we know what people expect, right? There's some things that are deeply intuitive, that when you spend time speaking to people, you spend time listening, you've got to think at what level are you speaking? Because when you ask someone the question, what do you want from work? And they say more time off, what's that really saying? That's really saying what's happening at work, what I'm doing in my job, isn't fulfilling. And how can I be more fulfilled? How can I do better? Is by spending more time away from it. More flexible working. When I come into the office, I feel depressed. I'm not enjoying it, so therefore I want to spend more time in my pajamas at home. I want more time. I want the ability to have different benefits. That's something maybe we can tune into, but you've got to understand what is driving this, what sits at the heart. And so, on the one hand, we run surveys and we ask the questions, but I think the most insight comes when you spend really deep time getting to know someone and understanding their psychology, understanding where they're truly at as a person. Because if we try and fix for the surface level questions, if we try and fix for the manifestations of a problem, for what's happening on the top level, it's never going to truly hit the root of it. How many times have you put in place a benefit? You've heard a survey, you've put in place something, and you thought, great, problem is fixed, amazing. I've changed the working patterns, I've done something, and then 3 months later, you have exactly the same grumbles as you had before. Does that resonate with anyone? I felt that myself. Like we put in place, people wanted, extra session with annual leave or whatever. We changed it around. A couple of months later, people have the same kind of questions yet again, because you don't speak to the heart of what's really going on for people in their emotional situation. People want everything. But does it really help when that is manifested? If you give people everything that they say they want, without really listening, without really tapping into what's at the heart of their employee experience, I feel, that's my perspective, each of you have your own businesses and your own complex structures that you're working within, and far be it from me to know the details of anyone else's world, but we need to go deeper when we're understanding what is a true employee experience and how do we navigate that. So I'd like to ask the room, we don't have a fancy poll, I know we're a tech company, but I decided to roll back the tech a little bit. What do people really want? And I will flip the question a little bit, because in order to understand what people really want, I think you have to understand the inverse. What makes people miserable at work? Go on, I'm going to throw myself out there, be vulnerable, because no one might say anything and I'll be stuck here like a lemon. But can anybody tell me, what makes people miserable at work?
Lack of recognition.
Lack of recognition. People, no one caring about what they've done. They've worked so hard on something and it just, moving on to the next day. Go on, what else makes people miserable? Being micromanaged, not having that trust of like, I trust you to get on with your job.
Heavy workload.
Too much work, just like endless cycles of stuff that keeps on going. Okay, what else makes people miserable?
Work that you don't like.
Doing stuff that's boring, yeah? Boring, like you could be doing the same thing every day, grim. What else makes people miserable?
Bad manager.
Oh, that's like perfect. Do you guys work in the same place? Go ahead, anything else? Sorry. Okay, bad management. When somebody doesn't get you, when somebody doesn't speak to the heart of who you are as an individual, you feel anonymous, you feel ignored, you feel micromanaged. That can make anyone's life a misery. Anyone else? Don't want to cut anyone off. Pardon?
Being bullied.
Being bullied, yeah, God forbid, right? There's like a real adverse negative experiences. And, you know, that's, now my wife's a psychologist and deals with, you know, the more complex side of this, but completely. If there's toxic behaviors going on in a workplace, you can try and fix everything. You can put in place all the wonderful structures and systems, but that will really can ruin someone's life. Okay, any other ones? Don't want to feel like anyone feel they're not heard.
Growth opportunity.
Pardon?
Lack of growth opportunity.
Feeling stifled, right? No growth opportunities, of course, that's very important. All right, so what I wanted to share is what I've heard from beneath this data, because we listened to thousands of people. I've spoken to founders from across the industry, based on also insights from, if anyone has come across Patrick Lencioni, had a wonderful session with him and some of his team, speaking, who called from the Table Group. These are things that we've learned from our insights from the employees whose lives we look after, from the employees who work with us, and from the other founders and COOs of businesses that I interact with on a regular basis. So I want to speak to the 4 causes of job misery and how we can really meet people's expectations, but not just meet. We can wildly exceed people's expectations of what work can be if we not only eliminate those, but then the inverse, cause people to thrive and flourish within these domains. The first, and people spoke to that, one of the core causes that we've learned of job misery is anonymity. And I'll speak to that. Of course somebody knows your name. Right? Everyone's got a name tag, right? I'm not anonymous, I'm Sam Fromson. It says so on my name tag, on my badge, and I wear that around the office every day. Anonymity. Who really understands me? Who understands what motivates me? What drives me? Does my manager really get what I want to achieve in my career? They might not be able to give it to me right now, but do they at least know what I'm yearning for, where I'd like to progress? Does anybody know details of my family, what my personal situation is? Who am I working for? What am I working to achieve? Is it stability for my elderly parents? Is it a better life for my kids? That anonymity, if somebody feels like nobody gets them in a company, it's almost impossible to then build that relationship of trust, that long-term commitment, that passion, that excitement that's going to allow them to thrive in an environment. And I'm sure you're all sitting here thinking, I've got 5,000 employees that I'm looking after, 10,000, 300,000 employees that I'm looking after. How on earth can I be responsible for knowing everyone and their stories? This guy's bonkers. It's all very nice and good when you've got 250 people. How the hell does that work at scale? And that's a bit to where the management point comes in. Because hopefully, within each organization, you've got some level of management that gives people that team dynamic in a way or another. And it could be the senior manager in a store responsible for their 20 employees. It could be the manager of a site. It could be the manager of a project. Within different white-collar firms, it's probably a little bit easier because the management tends to be slightly more centralized. And this can work, and I've seen this work, and I've spoken to people who've made this work across all different sizes of business, of course at different levels. But that manager, that person who works with them, knowing who somebody is, who they're working for, what they want to do. And this doesn't have to be deep psychological sessions on a weekly basis. A monthly check-in for 10, 15 minutes. A birthday card, a reminder, something that makes people feel heard and appreciated for who they are. And we call that recognition. But maybe we'll come on to that, the difference between those two things as well. It doesn't even need to be met with anything, but purely somebody else knowing that there's somebody who values them and understands them for who they are is crucial, I believe, to meeting people's expectations. So we struggle with that with remote work. And I really hate the term remote work, because work should be anything but remote. If you're remote, if you're distant, that disconnect is already evident in the phrase, in the words you're using. You know, maybe you're not in the same physical location, but we shouldn't be remote. You should be finding ways to breach that connection, to create those connection opportunities. And you can have those meetings however it works, be it via Zoom, whatever it might be, but it shouldn't be remote, it shouldn't be disconnected. Maybe. The next thing, what else? So the first thing that makes people miserable is anonymity. The second is lack of meaning. I believe that my job has no meaning. It's very hard to get excited. Maybe you can get excited by it for a brief period of time, for the thrill, for the kicks, but when you don't think that what you're doing has any impact, that truly, truly undermines people's experience as an employee. And you know, we know this, I'm sure you guys all know this, speaking to younger employees, Gen Z employees, 64% of people wouldn't take a job if the company doesn't have some sort of positive influence on the world around them. And we often think, wait a second, but my business does X, Y, Z. How do I turn that into something that's going to inspire and uplift those people who are, you know, very, very meaning-driven? It's wonderful if you're, you know, you're a charity, or a global charity, you know, you're saving the oceans, you're feeding orphans. Okay, pretty easy. My job has meaning. You know, when you're running, you know, a big white-collar law or consulting, or if you're, not that those don't have meaning, that's wonderful, but if you're running big, you know, profit-oriented organizations, retail, whatever it might be, you have to tap into that meaning in a slightly deeper way, a different way. And that can be from the ethos of the company, and that can also be on a personal level as well. You've made a difference to this customer. You've made my life easier. You know, Lorraine, thank you for being here. I really appreciate you being here, and it's really helped me to have someone nice and smiling at me from the front of the audience. You know, just on that personal level, it doesn't have to be the global mission. It's lovely if it can be. That's an easy fix. If your business does, you know, feed the children, clean the oceans, that's an easy one. But even if not, just knowing that you've made a difference to somebody on a personal level that day, that week, that can also provide meaning. Because human beings are social animals, and we want to help society at large, but we also want to help those around us. We want to feel connected to the people around us. So if you know that your job is helping your colleagues, you're making their life easier, you're helping a particular customer who was previously struggling with their supply chain, and you've cut out that person's headache. And you can see the relief in their face as a result of that headache decreasing on a weekly basis because of your support for their supply chain. That really makes a difference to people, and that is how to create an employee experience that keeps people committed, that keeps people engaged. So that's the second one. First is anonymity, the second, lack of meaning. The third, and we spoke about recognition, validation, quantification. Which are some of the industries which have the lowest levels of participant well-being? The most depressed, oh God forbid, not depressed, but the people who really struggle with their mental well-being most of any industry. Construction, there's certainly challenges, very, very much so. On a global basis, some people in performing arts really struggle with mental well-being. The criticism that comes from what seems like people in the modelling industry, people in performing arts really struggle as well, because their self-worth in any moment is at the whim of a critic who's judging on what seems to them to be an arbitrary basis. When you feel like your self-worth is tied to somebody else's arbitrary criteria, that can be destructive. That can also play a part in bullying when you feel like there's a capriciousness to how people are being treated, certainly in terms of lack of clear recognition when reward and compensation doesn't seem to be tied to effort and output. But having that quantification of somebody's ability to make a difference, really clear career structures, that plays into as well. If you are able to give employees a sense of that progression, what is being measured? How is it being measured? How does that make a difference? That can truly sit at the heart of someone's, you know, again, we're simple creatures. We want to know when we've done a good job. And if we're able to measure for ourselves how we've done a good job, how it makes a difference, then it leads to such a greater degree of satisfaction, of such a better experience when you know how you're being measured and how it stacks up against. So that quantification really is crucial when it comes to delivering a great employee experience. And you could be doing the most impactful job. Every single bean that you count equates to a child's life saved in Africa. Every single bean. And you're sitting there counting beans all day long. And every single bean that you count, you know it's making a difference. And your manager is so appreciative. Oh, well done, you've counted all those beans, really giving so much gratitude for that, and you're heard and you're acknowledged. Are you going to be able to sit and count those beans all day long? Maybe for 6 weeks, maybe for a summer, maybe for a couple of years, but sitting and counting those beans all day, every day, boredom, you spoke about that, right? Something that's not stimulating, not exciting. It's going to be very, very hard to keep someone's employee experience at peak, to give somebody a truly excellent employee experience if what they're doing is boring. Now, you might be thinking, okay, great, but that happens to be the job, right? The beans need to be counted. You need to get those beans counted every day. You need to, not to say any job is more boring or more interesting, but some things are repetitive. Stacking something in a warehouse can get tough over time. Whatever it might be, there are jobs that need to be done that aren't thrilling every day. How do you speak to that? How do you fix that? And the other aspects help, being heard, being recognized, but it's adding a bit of joy to the experience. We tend to think that work needs to be very serious. And insurance, I run an insurance company. We need to take that very seriously. We deal with people's lives, we deal with people's claims, we deal with the health and well-being data. It's very serious stuff. You guys all deal with very, very serious things. But you need to take what you do seriously. You don't need to take yourself so seriously necessarily. And if you're able to bring joy into an experience, you can still be counting the beans, you can still be stacking, but if you can bring an element of fun, an element of game, an element of positive energy into it somehow, that can require more creativity. That can be very tough to manifest. But if you get the right system in place, you've got millions of people. If this was my experience at school, learning languages was really boring. I was not good at learning languages. But you've got millions of people around the world with 100-day plus streaks on Duolingo because they've turned it into a game, right? And you go through the levels of Duolingo, you get that bit of positive feedback, and if someone was to tell you you're going to spend time as an adult willingly learning extra Spanish vocab, you'd have probably told them that you were nuts, because as soon as you got out of school, you'd be willing to quit Spanish vocab. But no, people do that willingly because there's that game dynamic, because there's those mechanics that make something that, for an average teenager, is grim as hell, into something that has a bit of magic to it, a bit of joy to it. And then you get that positive feeling, that reinforcing feeling. I am making a difference, and I am doing good, and I am impacting people's lives positively. But a way to entering into the experience, of joining the conversation, is through joy. And that's the hook. And that has to also sit at the heart of people having a great experience, especially for younger workforces. Gaming is not something that is, the basement of antisocial teenagers anymore. Gaming is present in every aspect of people's lives. People are playing games. You sit on the tube and you're watching middle-aged women playing Candy Crush. People are gaming as part of the mainstream. And so to tap into those fundamental dynamics, to tap into how people experience games, how people experience joy in those micro moments, is really crucial. So we've tackled the 4 things that we believe from our experience, and I've got 1 minute and 35 seconds left, and I'm not going to run over by a second. We've tackled those 4 things, which was anonymity, people feeling heard. We've spoken about something being measurable, how it can be truly measured. I did this out of order. How something can be measured. We've spoken about it being joyful, and we've spoken about it having meaning. And those 4 facets, which I did out of order, so apologies, those 4 facets of a great employee experience are ones that we truly believe can change the game. But doing it on a budget is tough. And each person has their own budget here, right? And there'll be wildly different expectation settings for, when you've got a CEO who's handing out the checks left, right, and centre to get everyone on board versus, oh my gosh, we are running to a really thin bottom line. But within each of those categories, there are things that you can do that don't cost the earth. There are things that you can do to genuinely make a difference with quite slim cost. It's not all about buying really expensive external providers. Obviously, I'm standing up here as, YuLife, right? We provide insurance and well-being solutions that we believe support people's being, people knowing about them, knowing that you're looking after someone's family, looking after the things that matter most to them, taking them on that journey of well-being in a joyful way. But it's not all about external providers. And, I'm not trying to do ourselves out of any conversations here. So don't my salespeople get really annoyed at me. But it's not about that. It's about finding what works for you, realizing where your skills are as a leader, and then trying to counterbalance and trying to find things that fit in to support that holistic picture of creating an employee wellbeing experience. See, I didn't even need that slide, of creating an employee wellbeing experience, an employee experience that can uplift people, can inspire people, and truly create something that will hopefully create long-term commitment and a long-term relationship and trust. And thank you very much for listening. Cheers, guys. Oh, sorry, I'm supposed to tell you. We've got an ebook out. If anyone wants to download our ebook about building the winning team, again, my marketing team will get very upset at me because I didn't mention that. We've got an ebook out which has all the findings from that survey. And again, if anyone wants to chat to me more or chat to my team more, we'll be around. Thank you so much, guys.